One author believes that the kindly, small mom and pop landlord that keeps rents low has come to an end. But that's just not the truth. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. Alright, so I have an interesting article for you today, and it's going over what one author believes is the end of the small mom and pop landlord that keeps rents low and keeps housing affordable, okay? And you know what? I don't believe that it's true. I believe that there are still a lot of landlords out there that are small, own one, maybe two properties and are keeping rents much more affordable than what you see a lot of the times with the larger corporate landlords. But there are a lot of smaller landlords, such as myself, which are being forced to keep our rents up at market rates because we cannot afford to keep our rents low. Okay, with inflation, with rising costs, with just the way that the market is right now, increasing interest rates, etc., we're just forced to keep our rents at much closer to market rates. And in my case, at market rates. And you know what? It is a smart thing to do because we're the ones who suffer the most. We're the ones who suffer the most when we don't keep our rates that high. So yeah, you know what? This author is seeing just, what they think is a trend. They think that fewer small mom and pop landlords, such as myself, are keeping their rents affordable. You know what? In the past, it might have been okay to say, hey, I've got a good tenant sitting up in my unit. I'm going to let that tenant, I'm not going to give that tenant a rent increase because, you know what? They're a good tenant. I want them to stay. They're paying my bills and things are going well. Well, now we are faced with a situation where our costs are increasing faster than, we know what to do with. And a lot of landlords in places such as California and places such as Washington State, where they have statewide rent control, they're saying, hey, if I don't increase my rents right now, I might never be able to get back up to the levels that are necessary. So, if there's a statewide rent cap that says that you cannot increase your rents more than 10% in a single year, well, that is just telling you that you have to increase your rents as much as possible every single year. Whereas you might have said, hey, you know what, I got a good tenant in there, I'm not going to increase their rents for 4 or 5 years. In the past, you might have said that, right? Well, now you can't play that game anymore. It just does not work. It doesn't work. Your business you'll end up upside down. You'll end up put in a situation where you are stuck with super low rents forever, and nobody wants to be in that hole. Nobody. So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like, subscribe button, maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Do you think that the small mom and pop landlords are now, operating just like the corporate landlords? I know in my case, I am because, I'm using professional property management. I'm, owning my properties under LLCs. I am, raising my rents to the level as close to the market rate as quickly as possible. I am requiring security deposits, and I am, I'm doing everything that I can to operate my small portfolio as like a business. And that's the way a lot of small landlords are doing now. And in the article, they even cover a landlord at first, right, who is somebody who owns 50 single family homes, 50. And I'm like, well, they consider this person a small mom and pop landlord? No, he operates a landlord business. It's just not a, hey, I own thousands of homes business. But, if you're talking about somebody who has revenues of over $100,000 a year, well, we're going pretty big there. This isn't somebody who just owns one house and, gets paid 10 grand, no, we're talking, we're not even talking about somebody who has over 100,000. If you own 50 houses, you probably have revenue of millions of dollars a year. This is a relatively decent sized business that you're operating here. Even if you have a full-time job on top of that, that thing is bringing in a lot of money, okay? And, that's a big beast, I know people who, own 50 houses, and man, they are literally, we're talking about people who are dealing with millions of dollars a year in revenues. We're talking about, just tons of contractors, tons of work, lots of paperwork. I mean, at my peak, I owned 16 units. I'm down to only owning 4 single family rentals right now. And that's because I'm taking a step back. But, like the paperwork requirements alone, nightmare for that many units. Okay, so I couldn't even imagine what we're talking about lawyers, we're talking about accountants, we're talking about property management company, we're talking about, you might have an administrative assistant assisting you as well. But anyway, let me get into this article. I'm off on a rant, just talking about what a small landlord, what they think is a mom and pop is. So this article is coming from businessinsider.com, and it says, "The End of the Kindly Mom and Pop Landlord." Let's get into it. Daniel doesn't think of himself as a mom and pop landlord. The 42-year-old engineer is a savvy real estate investor, the kind of guy who scours the internet to find nearby rents and combs through new listings with an eye toward expanding his mini empire. He owns nearly 30 rental homes, and while he outsources their day-to-day management to a large company, he makes sure his properties are within a 1.5-hour drive of his Atlanta home so he can stop by if necessary. And yeah, this guy, sounds like me, okay? 30 properties, works a full-time job as an engineer, early 40s. I mean, you might as well just be saying, hey, we're talking about Tony on Real Estate Investing and Landlord News, okay? And yeah, I'm an investor, but I'm also a landlord, okay? So just talking about what I did coming up into where I am right now. Yeah, all my properties are under property management right now, but I have self-managed before. I self-managed for years, okay? I've done rehabs before where I did all of the work. And even talking about a 4-unit that I owned, I lived in one of the units and then rented out the other 3 while I self-managed. So I was a very, very hands-on person, and I have moved away from that as time has passed. I've gotten older now, I've got a family, and, I just can't do that kind of thing anymore, especially because my job has me, very, very, very busy. So, obviously, I'm not just somebody who doesn't know the business and, just is buying houses and, running turnkeys. No, I actually have operated within the business for a while. Okay. And there's a lot of people out there like me. Now, I didn't push it to owning 30. I could have pushed it a lot bigger, and I just didn't want to get to that size just yet. But, I never see myself as being one of those people who owns hundreds or thousands of units. I'm going to remain relatively small because, you can still make a ton of money as a relatively small landlord if you know what you're doing. Okay. Real estate insiders often divide owners of single-family rental homes into 2 groups. There are the big guys, a small number of cash-flush Wall Street investors who own hundreds or thousands of properties, and then a whole lot of little guys, or mom and pops, who own the vast majority of single-family rentals. The stark black and white divide has proved useful for all types of groups. Big companies point to the prevalence of mom and pops as proof that corporations like themselves are nowhere close to taking over the market. Politicians invoke the moms and pops to highlight the contrast between the new class of greedy Wall Street landlords and the industry's humble origins. But Daniel, who requested anonymity to speak freely about his investments, is a prime example of the blurring line between the 2 factions. Nowhere near the size of private equity firms who gobbled up entire blocks of homes during the pandemic, but a far cry from the old guy who lives downstairs and hasn't raised rent in a couple of years. In this binary world, he's stuck with the mom and pop moniker. Yeah, and Daniel, don't be afraid, okay? Don't be afraid to, say who you are and what you do. You're a real estate investor. You're a landlord. I'm proud of it. I tell everybody this, right? Because, thinking about where I came from and where I ended up, I tell everybody, hey, I started off as a overnight stalker at Walmart. I'm 27 years old and, finally got my stuff together, went out and bought my first property. It took me until I was 34 before I bought my first rental property, okay? And, I worked my butt off to do it. And so I'm very proud of what I did and what I accomplished and where I ended up. So, don't be ashamed of it. But yeah, you're going to end up stuck, being considered a small mom and pop, even though you're not, you're kind of blurring the lines there. So let me continue. The past few years have solidified single-family rental homes as genuine money-making enterprises, not just ho-hum nest eggs. It costs nothing for small-time investors to cruise through Zillow and see what their neighbors are charging, which makes it easier to price their rentals more aggressively. Meanwhile, a whole ecosystem of startups has sprung up to meet the every need of mom-and-pop landlords, from basic stuff like tenant screening to the minutiae of air filter delivery. Brian Smith, the chief operating officer of AMH Homes, one of the truly big landlords with a portfolio of more than 59,000 homes, noted in a recent call with analysts that mom and pops hadn't traditionally been known for raising rents. But over time, he said, they've migrated into a strategy that's closer to that of big players such as AMH. Translation, the Wall Street mindset has gone mainstream. And I think that they need to differentiate between the truly mom and pop landlords, those people who own maybe one house, one rental property. They rent it, based on word of mouth. They don't do tenant screening. They don't really operate it as a business. It's a house that they used to live in. I think they need to differentiate between that and between small-time real estate investors, okay, and people who are running landlord businesses who are smaller, okay, because there's a big difference in the mindset. I have coworkers who own one rental property, and they just kind of they still collect the rent in cash. All the stuff that the landlords here who watch my channel don't do. They're still, it's like a trip back in time when you watch it, okay? It's like, well, how did you get your tenant? Well, Becky down the street told me that her daughter needed a place to stay. That would be literally, that is how they found their tenant. And did you do any tenant screening? No, she just gave me the first month's rent. Is there any sort of security deposit? No, security deposit. No, just gave me the first month's rent, and I let her move in. It's funny when you hear this sort of stuff, but there are a lot, and I'm talking about a lot of people who operate in that way. So we need to differentiate between those people and the people who are actually running landlord businesses, whether they are the size of me, with my 4 single family homes, or whether they are the size of the people in this article who have 59,000 single family homes, okay? It's not just if you own an apartment complex or if you own multifamily or not. It's really on how you operate your business and how you see it. So, if you are like the person in the article with the 30 houses, right, and you're operating it more as a business, then, I think what I'm trying to say is that we have the true small mom and pops, right? And I could say you could probably own, it doesn't even matter how many units you own. It really more matters your mindset and how you operate, okay? And I don't mind being lumped in with them because, like I said, I came from that. I came from self-managing and all that to where I am now, and I still don't own that many units, okay? In fact, I think it's time to retire the label of mom and pop landlord. There may be plenty of aging couples or accidental landlords sailing into retirement with an investment home or two in their back pocket, but even the smallest of landlords, lured by the promise of great efficiency and fatter profits, may no longer be content to merely have heads in beds. A steady stream of rental data and an onslaught of new property management services have made amateur landlords savvier than ever, and that's to say nothing of the changing of the guard as baby boomers age out of their property owning days, which leaves millennials and Gen Zers to take on the mantle. Yeah, and obviously, okay, now I am one of the youngest people in Generation X, so I'm 44 years old, born in 1979. So I'm the very last year of Generation X, right? But after me came the millennials, and yeah, they're in their 40s now. Yeah, they're going to be taking over for the older landlords who are retiring and selling their portfolios. And nothing wrong with that, okay? I think the main thing that this person here is saying is that we need to treat landlords, no matter how many properties you own, no matter if you consider yourself a small mom and pop or you consider yourself a corporate giant, they need to basically attack us all, That's what this person is saying. That's what this article is truly about. This is part of the thing that I talk about a lot. When they attack these corporate landlords, they are attacking us as well, because they don't see any difference at all between somebody who owns one house and somebody who owns 1,000. Okay? That's why, you look at these laws and they're like, oh, we're going to go after these corporate landlords. And then next thing you know, the guys like me are getting hit. I'm getting hit just like a corporate landlord would, okay? I did a video on how President Biden had proposed a rent control policy or a 5% cap on rents, right? And people in my comments were like, oh, well, this is only for the big landlords, for the people who own more than 40 houses, right? Or more than 40 units. And I was like, hey, you can be a relatively small landlord and own 40 units, okay? That's not going after corporate landlords. That could be hitting local guys like me, okay? So yeah, pay attention when you see these sort of laws being proposed. Pay attention to what they're doing when they say they're going after the corporate landlords because the corporates are buying up all the houses. They're not talking about the corporates. The corporates aren't buying nearly as many houses as us small mom and pops are, okay? Single family in particular. Now, the corporate guys are buying a ton of apartment complexes, and yeah, they're buying a lot of houses in certain markets, but if you come to the majority of the markets in the United States, you know who's buying most of the houses out there. Landlords like us. Okay, so when they make these rules, they are attacking us directly, whether we own one house or we own 50. So anyway, I'm put a link to the article in the I'll put a link to the article in the description down below. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you think of this whole situation. Do you think that they consider small mom and pop landlords and corporate landlords to be the same? And do you consider us to be the same? I know that I've had comments in my comment section from landlords saying that it's not them, it's the corporate guys. But, it doesn't matter what we think. It only matters what the public, the general public thinks, the people who are trying to attack us, okay? And if they see us as being the same, then we need to band together, with those big guys to make sure that these stupid laws and rules and regulations don't get passed.